We have to go into these countries because the gospel demands it. We're not only to proclaim the gospel, we're supposed to portray it, not only tell it, but show it. We understand that it's not just a matter of giving mobility aids to people with disabilities. No, if you want to change a nation, people's attitudes, culture, we work with disability networks and in-country partners to find out who are the mover and the shakers, who can we talk to, who will listen to us when we describe the plight of the people in country with disabilities, but also how we can help. This program raises questions. This program is for people who find it hard to trust God. The best answers are wrapped in flesh and blood. My friends, people who are enduring real tragedies every single day. Quadriplegia, muscular dystrophy, stroke, bankruptcy, loneliness, singleness. We're going to talk to those very people who have touched my life. When you have a disability, life is hard. The 24/7 nonstop routines, medical appointments, problems with insurance, and so much more. And that's just in our country, the US. People with disabilities in developing nations would give anything to even have a medical appointment or an insurance policy. There are more than 1 billion people with disabilities in the world, and 80% of them live in developing nations. But rather than quote facts and statistics, let me take you there. In this episode, you will join our Joni and Friends team, which includes 2 intellectually disabled people from the United States. You'll join them in a journey to El Salvador, where life with a disability is not just hard, it is unbelievable.
Here in El Salvador, we have 500,000 people with disability. That's more of 10% of the population here. So that's a very big need of all of the helps, the wheelchair, the crutch, all of that instrument that the people need here. We need all the help that we can get.
We consider Dr. Cotto a strategic partner because he's now in a position to shape policy that will impact people with disabilities for decades to come. And what's great is that this man is a believer in the Lord Jesus. And he understands that to change a culture, to help shape policy, you need good values. You need to ascribe worth and dignity and respect to people with disabilities. And here's a man who's doing it from the top. People with intellectual disabilities suffer the most social stigma, not only here in the United States, but yes, around the world. And we wanted to give Mark and David an opportunity for them to exercise their skills, their gifts, and influence attitudes in El Salvador. We believe Mark and David can have a big impact on the Salvadorians as their hearts and minds change about people with intellectual disabilities. And you know what? People with intellectual disabilities can do a great job and make great friends.
You and the Total Access team are going to come in and work on this school and make it accessible so that everybody will be welcome.
Yeah. We're lucky to have a place to live.
If you're a child with a disability without a wheelchair in a developing nation, chances are you're not going to be welcomed at school. In fact, there'll be barriers to keep you out of school. The United Nations says that 90% of children with disabilities in developing nations do not attend school, which is why Joni and Friends thinks it's so important to make not only the gospel accessible, but to make facilities accessible so that children with wheelchairs who receive our chairs can go to school.
Well, how long has he had this wheelchair?
¿Cuánto tiempo ha tenido esa silla?
Años.
A long time ago.
Yeah. He needs a new one.
Necesita una nueva.
Yeah. 35 from the back of the hip to the back of the leg. And 14 from the shoulder to the tailbone. 14 inches. David. David's over here. Right there.
Hi, nice to meet you.
He's got an advantage, he can see your hands. Yeah. So, David and Mark are going to help Jim Cowart do the modifications on the chair.
Okay.
And then we're going to ask you to do some translating and explaining on what needs to be done to the chair, to the new chair, to help for Ramo, make it fit better. So I'm going to take Mark and David over to work with Jim, and then I'll be right back, and then we'll do the translation. Okay?
Nice meeting you too.
All right. Let's go. Come on over here, David. We'll introduce you to Big Jim.
Organization like Joni and Friends that is bringing here many things that we don't know yet. For example, of course we know about wheelchair, but we don't have the specialty to sit the people. So that for us was new. In 3 years we are learning how to do that, and hopefully next year we can start by our own, not just when Joni and Friend comes, but with our people to start sitting by our own. Here, disability was considered a curse. So when a family has a baby with some disability, they hide it. So they take this boy and hide for all life. So most of the family with one member with disability was ashamed about having a baby with disability. So that is the beginning of this area in which we want the people with disability has the same opportunity and education, work, and the life. And for me, that's a dream that the people with disability enjoy the same life that all of us, with the same opportunity. I think this is in the very deep part of God's heart. If we want to fulfill the will of God, we have to feel that this is one of our brothers that we have to love and to take care of them.
This is the main gate, and the only thing they have here is a wooden ramp without rails. Can you imagine trying to get up that ramp in a wheelchair?
We have here a big hospital, public hospital, which is the largest in the city, and we call Rosales Hospital. That hospital is built from French aid, I don't know, maybe 100 years ago. So the construction is very old and is completely inaccessible. So 2 years ago, when the team from Total Access came, we take them to the hospital, and they have a big job to do. So they start in phases.
You want to help them? You want to help them move that pile over?
Paul Welch and his wife Pat have been Joni and Friends volunteers for many years in the U.S. and overseas. They were so drawn by the need in El Salvador that a few years ago, after Paul retired as a school teacher, he and Pat decided to spend 6 months of every year living and ministering in El Salvador as associates of Joni and Friends.
Do you see how many people are waiting? They have from the doctor here at the hospital. This is a hospital, and this is a public hospital. There are hundreds of people come here every day. Every day we have 200 or 300 people at a time come. You can walk over this way. All these people, if we were a patient, we would wait here maybe up to 2 hours. Then they call your name and we'll go through those doors, and then they have your files, and then you have to go sit another hour.
I had to sit one day in my doctor's place
Yeah.
for 2 hours.
2 hours, so you know how they feel a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's go down, and all these people along the hallways, they're waiting to see a doctor. All right, you gonna go, Carol? All right, there we go. Here's one of their wards, and so they have several beds. This is the dry season, but in the rainy season, it rains every day heavily. So some of these, you can see the windows are broken out, and the roof leaks, so they would have water inside. But they do the best they can with what they have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good, good.
Just like I did.
Yeah, well, you think of your time in the hospital too.
Got a gun.
Yep.
I learned those things are not toys.
No, they're not. They're not at all.
They're weapons.
Yeah. If you notice the guard with the mask on,
Yeah.
he is from the prison. And they have a prisoner who needs help. He's sick. So they keep their identity a secret so that they're not visited at their homes by other ex-prisoners or gang members. So it's a very dangerous job they do.
Gang violence in El Salvador is rampant, and businesses have to take care of themselves. Shotguns and assault rifles are present everywhere, from armed guards on Coca-Cola trucks to fast food restaurants with security personnel with shotguns, all of them ready to defend themselves and their property.
The first year that we came, the president added the military with the police. And but what happens that I see at night, they all disappear. The police, the army, they go home. And after dark, it's a whole different society. So yes.
Well, they can see their nose.
Well, it's hard to recognize all the time by the nose. When a bus goes through their territory as a gang, they charge that bus for going through. If the bus drivers say no, they kill them and set the bus on fire. So 2 years ago, there were 301 bus drivers that were killed from gangs.
Okay. These are the things that you're going to find in our sidewalks that are hard for us to notice when you are blind. And also when you are a wheelchair user, because as you can see, the sidewalk is not regular. You will find out.
Carol Lopez was a popular, typically fashion-conscious teenager who didn't like wearing glasses. So, for a high school graduation present, she begged her parents for laser eye surgery. But things went terribly wrong at the hand of an incompetent surgeon. The resulting infection was so devastating that even a series of surgeries in the U.S. was not able to save her sight.
I didn't want to continue living. I tried to kill myself twice, and then, one day I was tired of not being able to live or to die, so I just said, okay, Lord, I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't want to live anymore, but if you don't want me to go with you, do something with my life, because I don't want it anymore. The way it is, I don't like it. I don't remember, but in very few days I decided to go to the school for the blind. I decided that if I was going to live as a blind person, I had to learn how to live this life. I began to, learn everything again, how to read, write, walk, eat, do simple things that you learn when you are a little child. I had to learn them again. Some people are rude and they don't treat you well and they don't trust you and things like that. But we have to live with that here, and we have to get used to that, because some people take advantage of your disability. Sometimes when you buy some things in the street and some people see that you are blind, you can give them a $10 bill, for example, and they don't give you the exact change. they tell you that they are giving you a $5 bill and what they are giving you is a $1 bill, for example. So they take advantage of you because you cannot see the bills. Things like that.
See, God says we're supposed to love one another like He loves us.
Uh-huh.
That's what it is.
That's the way it should be. And we have to pray and work for, see that things are changing.
David Reyes is an amazing young man. He's the first congressman with a disability ever elected in El Salvador.
Lo más valioso para mí es tener libertad para soñar. Y mi sueño es que cada joven salvadoreño tenga...
David has no use of his legs, but that doesn't stop him from racing an ATV or surfing and teaching others with missing limbs to do the same. He is inspiring people with disabilities across his country to use their abilities to serve others.
Somos gente de trabajo a tu servicio. My name is David Reyes. I am 30 years old. I am honored to be the first congressman in El Salvador history that has a disability, and also I am the youngest congressman here in El Salvador. When I was 11 or 12 years old, I went to my pastor, to my church, and said, Pastor, please can you explain me what's the purpose of God for me to being born as a disabled person? And I think that was a hard question for him to answer to me. And he gave me the Joni book, and I was 11 or 12, and I read it. And that book impacted my life, and it inspired me and showed me that I could make a difference.
Congressman Reyes has a chance to inspire tens, hundreds of thousands of people in his own country and beyond and throughout Central America. He's in a position to initiate incredible change in that country.
Now, when you went to school, were there many kids with disabilities?
No, not really. I went to 3 different schools and all of them were private and none of them were accessible.
Here in El Salvador, we don't have accessible schools, and that's something that needs to be done.
I never had classmates or students in those schools because they weren't accessible. So most of our children, when they have a disability, their parents have to look for accessible schools, or I don't know, but most of our people with disabilities come from low-income families, so for them it's very difficult. We are not used to, have children with disabilities studying with children without disabilities. So it's a cultural thing in our country, unfortunately.
Yeah. We face a lot of discrimination in finding jobs. That's something hard for people with disabilities to get in the productive life, because there are not opportunities for them.
Here in El Salvador, it's very hard to rent a place or to buy a house when you have a disability, because people don't want to rent a house or an apartment when you have a disability. They don't think that you will be able to pay them. So if you don't have...
They would have to think, because I would pay them up right away.
Yes, but here they don't trust you.
We need transportation accessible, because if we will have education, health, and works, but we don't have a transportation system accessible, it doesn't work.
And to change transportation, we will have to change bus drivers. They stop wherever they want. They don't care if you're blind. They don't wait until you get off. They just run, and if you fall, bad luck. We have to make them sensitive.
So maybe the very first thing to make accessible is people's minds.
Yes. She's in 4th grade. She's
Okay.
11 years old.
Okay.
She said that before coming here, she went to the school for the blind and she learned Braille and some other things. And now she's enjoying being here with other children.
Okay.
And it's very rewarding to see that there are children with disabilities studying with children without disabilities. And maybe if we cannot change adults' minds, but if we change children's minds, they are our future adults. So, eventually we're going to see our population with a different perspective about people with disabilities.
Right.
We have to show them that we worth and we can do something. And I think that, well, having David at the Congress is a great thing, because I think that it is difficult to show people we are able to do good and great things, and it makes them think about us not as needy people, but we are willing and we are able to give something for our country, and that's good. Here we are getting into a Rommel's room. As you can see, we have here a little stair. He sleeps with his two brothers. One is Rommel's bed and the other one is for the other two boys. They don't have an accessible bathroom. The only bathroom that they have is out of the house, and it's too far, so Rommel cannot go there. So what they do is that he wears Pampers all the time. Okay. Rommel has some animals here. He has fishes and a dog, and he loves animals, so he would like to become a veterinarian when he grows up. Something that is very beautiful about this family is that usually here in my country, men leave their wives when they have a child with a disability. So they just go away and they don't want to know anything about, their wives or their children. But Rommel's dad is here. After 13 years, he's still here. He is very supportive. He's always trying to help. He's the only one who works, so he's the one who brings, money and food to the house. And he loves his family. He even made a loan to buy a car, thinking about Rommel's, good and everything he needs. And what Rommel's mom told me is that his dad is always asking her what he needs and what else he can do to improve his quality of life. So I'm sure he loves his family, and that's very beautiful, because here in my country, in El Salvador, that's not what always happens. That's very, you can count the cases like this with the fingers of your hand. It's not regular. It's not something that usually happens. So it's very nice to know that there are still men who care and who are responsible and caring enough to, be with their families after all the situations they have been through.
My father named me David because I was facing fighting against dying when I was born, and he visualized me. He saw me as David fighting with that giant, and he says, "I'm going to name my son David because he's going to conquer and he's going to overcome that giant of in that day the death." And I believe that when he did that, he blessed my whole life, because I am a person that has always faced challenges. And here in El Salvador, we still have a non-inclusion culture for people with disability. There is a lot of discrimination for people with disabilities, but it can be an excuse for anybody to make a change. I believe that when you have God in your heart, you can do anything. There are no limits. the only one limitation for a person, it is not if you don't have your hands or your legs. The only one limitation for a person is to not have God in your heart.
People in any developing nation face overwhelming challenges, but when you add a disability to the mix, hopelessness can settle in. That's why I so admire people like Carol, the blind young woman you met in this episode. She has left self-pity behind and is doing everything she can to change disability culture in her country. It's not only a matter of putting in a ramp in Rommel's school so that he can get to his classroom. No, it's much more than that. The big picture is, yes, we're working from the top down with governments and educational institutions, but also from the bottom up, because Rommel will now make friends with classmates. He's going to a school of 100, 200, 300 kids, and those children will want to sit together with him in cafeteria. They'll want to be his friend. They'll show him respect. He'll have dignity, and that will change their attitudes. That's the way to grip a new generation.
When I was a kid, I didn't have somebody to admire, honestly. And I want to be that person for all these kids, so they can see if he could do it, I can do it too.
And that's why we at Joni and Friends think it's so important to come alongside to initiate change. Psalm 140 says, "I know that the Lord upholds the cause of the needy." And the Lord is looking for people like you and me who will join his cause. If there's an outreach in your church that addresses the needs of people with disabilities in the developing nations, then please support it. Uphold the cause of the needy overseas, because Proverbs 14 says, "Whoever is kind to the needy honors God."